Our next speaker, Iman from INRIA, will be talking about server-side tracking.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Iman Fouad, and today I'm really excited to share with you our work together with Cristiana Santos and Pierre Laperdrie on detection, measurement, and lawfulness of server-side tracking. Users' privacy became a major concern, sparking significant interest into web tracking. So what is web tracking? Web tracking refers to the technique that allows its operator, sometimes even its partners, to recreate part of the user's browsing history. Now the question is, how can we detect these tracking techniques? Well, we have several tracking techniques. However, to this day, cookie-based tracking remains the most commonly deployed. So let's have a closer look into cookie-based tracking. Imagine a user browsing the web. Let's say the user visits Amazon.com. The website visited by the user might include content by a third-party tracker. We refer to this content as tracker content. Using this content, the tracker can place a cookie on the user's browser that will be later on redirected to the tracker server. On the server side, the tracker receives the cookie along with additional information included in the request. Using this information and the cookie, the tracker can link the website visit to the user. Now let's say that the user continues browsing the web, visits different websites that include content from the same tracker. Within each website visit, a request will be sent to the tracker along with the cookie that is already stored in the browser. Now on the server side, using this request, the tracker will be able to recreate part of the user's browsing history, or what we refer to as user's profile. As you can conclude, this practice is very intrusive for the user's privacy. This data can help infer users' preferences, which could be used for targeted advertising or even for more concerning practices. And so the question is, how can we protect users' privacy? Well, in the last few years, we had several attempts by several actors to protect users' privacy and block tracking. Users have been relying on privacy-preserving extensions such as Privacy Badger and Glossary to reduce tracking on the website they're visiting. On the legal aspect, governments became more aware of the user's privacy, which led to regulations such as GDPR and e-privacy directive in Europe. These regulations help set guidelines for the data collection and processing. And finally, on the browser level, we had several attempts, and the last attempts included the decision of deprecation of third-party cookies that is now planned for 2025. These cookies were the core of tracking techniques, and so the decision of deprecation of these cookies led to the emergence of new tracking techniques, including server-side tracking, the main focus of our presentation today. And so what is server-side tracking? So far, we've seen that in regular tracking, the websites include the tracker content directly in the website, and therefore we have the requests that are directly sent from the user's browser. Moreover, for every tracker, we have a distant exchange with the browser. Now, with server-side tracking, this tracking logic is shifted to the server side. The websites only need to include the SSC service that will be then responsible of dispatching the data to corresponding trackers on the server side. The question now is, how can we detect such practice? The transition of the tracking logic to the server side makes it really challenging to detect such practice, and therefore we relied on a behavioral methodology. We analyzed the behavior of the SSC service, and the tracker shifted to the server side, and we focused on websites that shifted from regular tracking to server-side tracking. Because of our focus on this specific set of websites, we believe that our result represents a lower bound of usage of server-side tracking in the web. Now, moving to our methodology, the first step was the detection of emerging domains. Google introduced server-side tracking in August 2020. Before that date, not much companies introduced server-side tracking. It was not commonly deployed. Therefore, we believe that domains performing server-side tracking will be included in recent crawls, but not in crawls before that date. In that context, we performed a post-SST crawl and a pre-SST crawl, and we used these two crawls to extract the set of domains that were included after the introduction of server-side tracking. Next, we focused on the detection of cloaked domains. So basically, when a website includes a server-side tracker, with default configuration, this server-side tracker will appear as a third-party service, generating third-party requests and responses, and these requests can be easily detected and blocked. Therefore, the SST providers recommend the usage of DNS configuration so that the SST domain appears as a first-party subdomain. In our dataset, we consider that a first-party subdomain is a potential SST service if it's pointing to an organization different from the visited website's organization. We're focusing on domains that have the technical ability on tracking the users. And so for that purpose, we performed an additional crawl that we refer to as user-specific crawl. We use the user-specific and post-SST crawl to detect identifier values. We use the related works methodology. I will not go into details. You can refer to the paper to read more about the identifier detection techniques. Last, we detected the trackers that are shifted to the server side. Now let's go back to our example. Let's say site.com includes tracker 1 and tracker 2 that are performing regular tracking. So each of these trackers, let's say, have its own patterns that is defined by the parameters sent to the tracker and the cookies set by this tracker. We consider that tracker 1 and tracker 2 are shifted to the server side behind sst.site.com if this sst domain, sst.site.com, that example, is reusing the pattern of tracker 1 and tracker 2.com and receiving the data that was previously sent to these trackers. Now, to conclude, to detect potential server-side tracking, we use a pre-SST, post-SST, and user-specific crawl, and we consider that a domain is potentially performing server-side tracking if first, it's an emerging domain that appeared after the introduction of Google SST, it's a cloaked domain that follows the recommendation of the SST providers, and it's hidden behind a first-party subdomain. It has a technical ability to track the user's activity, and finally, we detect that trackers are shifted to the server side behind that domain. As a result of our study, we detected cloaked trackers on 389 websites and server-side tracking on 28 websites. In that table, we present the top 5 trackers that are shifted to the server side behind the SST domain. We found that DoubleClick.net is the first or the top tracker shifted to the server side behind an SST on 21 websites. The prevalence represents the percent of websites that directly include the tracker, and the high percentage of prevalence represent the fact that actually it will have a high impact if these trackers decide in the future to move to the server side. Finally, we compared these trackers to the filter list, and we found that if these trackers were directly included in the website, they would have been blocked, which leads us to the conclusion that server-side tracking actually has a major threat to the user privacy and help trackers evade traditional blocking methods by being hidden in the server side. Finally, with the legal co-author, we analyzed the legal consequences of server-side tracking, and we found that it actually violates GDPR and e-privacy directive. First, we detect that personal data is being shared to the SST domains that we detect. I have to mention that during our study, we never interacted with the cookie banners, and so all the tracking that is happening is without the user's consent. Also found that server-side tracking introduced new challenges. It became really difficult to assess the purpose of the cookie. In fact, now with the server-side tracking, it's really hard to determine which domain was actually responsible for setting the cookie. And finally, because of the transition of the tracking logic to the server side, we have a transparency issue. We no longer see the trackers or the data that is being shared to these trackers. And so to conclude, in our study, we built a custom SST detection methodology, and we detected server-side tracking on 28 websites. We showed that it introduced a number of legal and technical challenges. It's hard to block, it's hard to audit, and it makes it almost impossible to verify the lawfulness, which ring a warning sign regarding the future of tracking. Thank you for your attention.
Great work, Imane. And I mean, I hope everyone appreciates how great the implications are for our lines of work, like empirical web studies. My question is, so you detected third parties such as Facebook. Is this based on, like, in the pre-SST crawl, there was Facebook on this particular website. In the post-SST crawl, there is no Facebook, so it must have been moved to server side, or is it based on specific parameters that, say, Facebook pixel collects?
It's actually all the criteria that I defined combined. So first is, okay, in pre-crawl, we had Facebook, for example, and then in post-crawl, we don't have it anymore. And then in the post-crawl, we have a new domain that is a first-party subdomain included after the introduction of SST and reusing the parameters of Facebook, let's say.
Great presentation. I've been looking forward to this all week. If you haven't dug into the Facebook Events Manager, it will show you all of the information that they can collect, and it's on the user that installs it on the website to click on what you want to be sent, and it is very detailed. It is completely identified. If you click on those boxes, it's sending email address, physical address, all of those things. And it is very unclear from the user side how you can opt out of this, because when you talk to Facebook and they're like, and you tell them, like, this seems like you're evading, the consent banner. And they're like, oh, no, it's just to make sure you get more honest analytics. And I'm like, yeah, that seems fuzzy. So I would encourage the community also to figure out how do we help website users that want to have some analytics, protect privacy, and be able to opt out of sending this, because right now there's no mechanism. If you have the server-side tracking set up, there's no way to opt out of it depending on what you set up. So great work, and please keep going.
Thank you.
Hi, very interesting. Did you find any signs of server-side tracking in privacy policies, cookie banners, something the sites communicated to the users?
We actually cited use cases, and it was never mentioned the use of server-side tracking.
Yeah, we can probably have one more question because
Thank you for the talk. Conceptually, how different do you think this is than, let's say, CNAME cloaking, where it's a first-party subdomain which is being used to do the same thing?
Okay.
Is it conceptually the same, or it's like fundamentally different?
Well, you have more privacy issues here. On server-side tracking, it's like you have the SST service that is included in the website, but then on the server side, it's dispatching data to several trackers. It's not like one tracker, but it's like several trackers on the server side. And you cannot see this exchange of data or these trackers on the server side compared to regular tracking. So it's more concerning.
one last question.
Thanks for your presentation. I appreciate the work. When looking at your methodology about looking at where first-party domains for tracking are now sent as parameters for first-party to the third-party, have you considered for the next step working with anyone in like the ad blocking community in terms of using that same methodology for informing block lists to be able to make the next step of countermeasures against server-side tracking based on your methods of identifying which subdomains are now being used, the third party now is sent to the first party?
I mean, that would be great. We haven't discussed it yet, but yeah, we'd be open to that. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank our speakers again.